Sitaram, and a pleasant morning to all of our viewers and listeners, and welcome to another edition of the program Addiction and Recovery. I am your moderator this morning, Jason Kalu. Join me as we welcome the host of the program to Addiction and Recovery, Mr. Ramnaresh Dwarka. Sitaram, ji, sir.
Jason, and thank you very much for having me on the program. Let me join with you in welcoming all our listeners, both locally and internationally. I know this program is reaching a lot of people worldwide, and because it is on Facebook as well as on YouTube now. So, yes, Jason, we have been talking about in our last program. We did what is called, we discussed the 12 questions that are critical to determining whether you're an alcoholic or not. And I did receive quite a number of calls and referrals as a result of that, inquiries since that program. And I would want to continue in the same vein because that program would have sparked a discussion in our listeners' minds. You know, a lot of people who listen to the program, Jason, began to think and question whether they too may have a problem with alcohol or drugs. Because, you know, we can't cause anyone to change, but we could cause them to think. And if they think, eventually they may decide that they probably need to do something about their drinking or drug use. And I want to thank the crew at the station for the video that preceded the program. And I also want to say that we are very fortunate in Trinidad and Tobago. And when I say on this program, I'm also addressing people who might be listening in worldwide. As a result, for those in Trinidad, there are contact numbers here. Of course, my number on the screen is 671-3040. Anyone can contact me after the program if they need for any further assistance or information. And of course, if you're calling from abroad, you'll have to put 1868 before you put the 671-3040. And there is also there are resources in Trinidad that I want to speak about this morning, because if you listen to the last program and you have decided, look, you need to do something about your drinking or drug use. And if you live in Trinidad and Tobago, we are very fortunate in Trinidad and Tobago because of the efforts of people like Professor Berbrand and all those other professionals and members of Alcoholics Anonymous who have kept the fire burning, as it were. And in Trinidad, although we are a very small population of just about 1.3 million now, we have the highest proliferation of AA groups, you know, Jason, more than any other country in the world. Now, one might jump to the conclusion to think that we have the biggest alcohol problem as well in the world, you know, but it may not necessarily be so. Although I think worldwide, there's at least about 10 to 15% of the world's population that is affected by this disease. And this is why it has appeal. This program will have appeal across the board, not only in Trinidad and Tobago, but anywhere anyone is listening to this program, or anyone accessing the television's programs posting on Facebook and on YouTube as well, will also find the material we discuss here is very relevant. Although it is kind of specific, the resources I'm going to speak about, starting with, we have about 124 AA groups in Trinidad and Tobago. We have also Narcotics Anonymous groups that are widespread in North, Central, and South. And if anyone who is interested in contacting to get further information, they can call me at 671-3040, or they can call the General Service Office. That is 768-8066. That is 768-8066, which is located at Rivulet Road near the Bridging Castle factory in central Trinidad. So at that office, you will be able to get further information as to where these groups, all these AA groups are located. There's a pamphlet that I referred to on the last program that is available in most AA groups that contain a directory of AA groups, what time they meet, and the addresses at which they meet. Now, as I say this, I would like our listeners worldwide to know that there is also the General Service Office of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is located in New York. It is at 475 Riverside Drive, 11, New York City. That's the same compound as the Columbia University. And they welcome visitors all the time. And their contact number is 1212-870-3400. I'll repeat that, 1212-870-3400. And they could be reached because they also prepare a worldwide directory, Jason, so that for people who are traveling out of Trinidad or anywhere in the world, if you are if you belong to an AA group and you are you are going on a vacation to some other country, or you're removing residence to another locality, you can get this information from your local general service office, like we have in Trinidad. And there are also, like in Trinidad, intergroups, that is area offices, where if you live in a particular area, that, like in Trinidad, we have the Northern Intergroup, we have the Central Intergroup, we have the Southern Intergroup, and now we have several other little intergroups servicing little pockets of AA groups. And these groups also will give you information, and sometimes they're able to actually provide direct help. I remember when I worked at Cora Hospital, we had a list of all the groups in Trinidad, and we had the names, actual names and phone numbers of people who were in recovery, who were members of those groups, and who had indicated that they were willing and able to work with newcomers. So what would happen is when people came to Cora and they did their 6 weeks in-house treatment, rehabilitation, before they went out to the community, at the time I worked as a social worker, psychiatric social worker there, I would make contact with someone in their community. For instance, if the person was from Felicity, I would have 3 or 4 people who I have on my list who are in recovery and who are members of AA from Felicity. And I would ask the patient leaving to be discharged, whether they know any of these people, because most of the time drinkers know each other. They would have probably drank in the past with each other. And or if they had any objection to any of these people coming and making contact with them, so that before they left the treatment facility, once they agreed, I would contact the person from the community, and they would come and they would make contact even when while the person is in treatment. They will make contact and establish a relationship, so that when the person left treatment to go on their, they went on a weekend pass home, this person sometime is able to come and pick them up, take them home, take them to their first meetings. And I was part of a research team, Jason, with Dr. Igwe, a Nigerian doctor, and our own alcoholic rehabilitation officer, Mr. Lincoln Ogier. And we did a research right here in Trinidad. And what we found is that among the people who were discharged, those who did not go and join a support group like their church or AA or anyone, they did not last very long in sobriety. They relapsed very quickly. But of the people who left the center and found an AA group, almost 85% of them continued to remain sober long after they were discharged from the program. So that it is very, very important wherever in the world you have treatment facilities, if they link up with their local Alcoholics Anonymous groups, they can find that they are much more successful in not helping people to stop, but helping them to stay stopped. So that in Trinidad, we have had a very good relationship that while AA does not affiliate with other organizations, because that is because they are anonymous, they cooperate with organizations so that you'd find a lot of people in recovery in AA in Trinidad would come to the Coro Hospital like once a week, and they would conduct meetings there so that the people in treatment, they get a chance to see what AA or NA looks like. You know, there's a lot of misconceptions in the society about what happens in AA meetings and NA meetings. You would hear people saying, boy, you have to go there and talk your business, and they don't know whether you have to sign forms or they keep lists there, and you know what is the procedure. And when AA meetings are held in institutions, people, they break out of all those misconceptions. So the people, the residents on leaving the institution, they are much more willing to go to an AA meetings. And those who go to AA meetings, you know, as I said, I've said in previous programs here, Alcoholics Anonymous have been found to be the most successful program in the world in helping alcoholics and to stay sober. And the same principles that AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, use are now being used by Narcotics Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous. In fact, there are several other fellowships that have sprung up and that are using the same principles to help their membership to stay in recovery. So that I am saying wherever it is possible, you know, institutions and individuals can find, you know, anyone can stop drinking. Stopping drinking is difficult, or stopping drug use is difficult, but it is more difficult to stay stopped. Because, Jason, you see, our minds, a lot of us will stop when we encounter a crisis of some sort. You know, some of us would have been brutalized by the police and sent to AA or sent to the courts system. Some of us would have gotten into an accident or now facing a divorce with our spouse, or, you know, our business is now heading to foreclosure because of our drinking and mismanagement. And sometimes forced by, out of necessity, a lot of people will eventually decide to stop. And some of them actually do stop. But the human mind works like this, Jason. You know, it is estimated, researchers have estimated that every crisis redefines itself within 6 weeks. So that if you had a crisis, you know, and it bothered you, you can't sleep, you're worried about it, you're stressed out. But if it persists, after 6 weeks, you would have accepted it. You would have, you know, colonized it. You would have probably moved on to other things. In other words, it is not foremost on your mind. You would start forgetting it. So a lot of people decide to stop drinking because of some crisis. But if they don't get continued support, they will relapse because the mind necessarily forgets. You know, I have often used this illustration. Jason, if you're walking down the road and you stump your toe, right, you're going to feel it paining, right? And then for the next maybe 15 or 20 minutes, you will probably walk carefully. You understand? But after a little while, you'll forget because the mind is made up that way. It does not remember and hold on to pain for very long, because if it did that, we would probably go crazy. So of necessity, we forget. And if you are depending on that pain of that crisis or that situation, or, you know, to help you to stay sober, after a while you'll forget. And this is why a lot of people relapse. But that is where the strength of AA comes in, because once you keep going to meetings, you are always hearing from new people who are coming in, you know, about their experiences, how there's, you know, nothing is getting better out there with drinking and drug use. So that it keeps you reminded. In addition to being reminded, you know, because in every meeting a person goes to, they always hear something that they could identify with. In other words, in their mind, they're saying, you know, that happened with me as well. But more than that, by listening, some of the things you would have forgotten, like I mentioned before, you hear other people, wait, you know, that happened with me as well. And that happened. And eventually it takes you to a position where you're not only admitting you're an alcoholic, but you are accepting. you realize, hey, I'm really an alcoholic, just like all the other people who are saying that they are. But in AA, they don't only talk about their alcoholism to help you to identify. You remember we discussed the 12 steps of AA in the previous programs. So it introduces the new person to certain principle, 12 steps as they were, that would help you now to stay sober. And not only stay sober, but stay sober comfortably. Because you don't want to just stay sober, you know, because you want to remain abstinent. Because a person who became an alcoholic, a lot of people were alcoholics even before they started drinking because of their lifestyle, because of their thinking, because of their attitude. And it is that attitude that led to the mismanagement of their life. And a lot of people would have took recourse in drinking to help them to cope. So that if you just put down the glass and you do not learn how to cope with problems, how to resolve conflict, how to deal with your low self-esteem or your inflated ego, that is always going to land, and your attitude that always landing you in trouble. In fact, a lot of people have translated AA to mean altered attitudes. So it is like, a person can, like we talking to people, we can probably take them out of the gutter, take them out of the hole that they have found themselves in. But AA can also not only take you out of the hole, it can take the hole out of you. It can take the gutter thinking out of you as well. You understand? So that is really what sobriety is. Sobriety is different from abstinence, Jason. You know, one can put down the glass and remain abstinent, but continue to be miserable, continue to have, a lot of trouble. In fact, I have heard some spouses tell me in sessions here, better he was still drinking, because when he was drinking, he would just come and go and sleep, you know, and I could still steal some money from his pocket. You understand? But now he's sober, the man has, his hand has become tight as the bark of a tree. He's so, you know, impatient, and he's so controlling, and spouses find it very difficult. And this is why spouses themselves need to go to the Al-Anon fellowship, because they too need to look at how his drinking, their spouse's drinking, has affected them and caused them to behave in a certain way. Because, as I've said before, this is a family illness, Jason. While the alcoholic, whether he be the head of the man, the head of the household, or the woman, once you're drinking alcohol, the people are or using drugs, the people around you are going to be affected. And this is why alcoholism and drug addiction is seen as a family illness. That while the addict or the alcoholic is getting sick, the people around them are changing, their behavior is changing to cope with the alcoholic or the drug addict. Because alcoholics and drug addicts, they tend to become very manipulative. They always want to be in the limelight of everything. They want to take center stage. They want to be in control. And they can be very selfish, self-centered, and unreasonable. And as a result of that, the people around them, the spouse, the children, the siblings, they are all affected by this person's attitude, and they react in kind sometimes. You understand? And that makes the whole family situations very pathological. And this is why, although you are in recovery or you are deciding to go into recovery, it is important to choose a program that gives you the best option of not only stopping, remaining abstinent, but remaining sober. That is, changing your attitude and so on. So, just for those people who might have decided, look, I want to do something about my drinking or drug use, in Trinidad and Tobago, we have the Substance Abuse Prevention and Treatment Center that is at Cora Royal Road. At the number for Cora Hospital in Trinidad is 662-2211. That is 662-2211. And the Cora Hospital, I have chose to name them first because, yes, I work there and I know that the program they offer is a 6 weeks program, which is very effective. Why it is very effective is because the Substance Abuse Prevention and Treatment Center is staffed by very professional people. You have a consultant psychiatrist there as the head of the medical team, and then there are trained professional psychiatric social workers, there are psychiatric trained nurses, there are people who are working in the field of substance abuse, nursing assistants, and the entire staff there are very, very adept at working with alcoholics and drug addicts. And the services are offered for free. It's a national service that is offered to all the residents of Trinidad and Tobago. And we have had people from other islands who, with permission from the Ministry of Health, were able to access treatment here as well, where there were no treatment facilities available in their country. So at the Cora Hospital, when you can access the treatment program there. On a Thursday, there's the clinic. It still is on a Thursday from 8 to 12, so that if no matter where in Trinidad you live, if you think you have a drug problem and you would like to go to the in-house facility at Cora, you will need to go there on a Thursday at 8 o'clock. And if you have a referral from your own general practitioner, it helps, but it's not absolutely necessary as far as I'm aware. You just show up there, and what they do there, they will do an assessment. You'll wait and see one of the members of the team, either the psychiatrist, the social worker, or the house officer, and they will do an assessment as to whether you do in fact have a drug problem. They will also do an evaluation as to the extent of the problem. They will also make a determination as to what is the best stream of treatment that will best suit your problem. Because there's inpatient treatment, there is outpatient treatment as well. So that you'd find there are certain considerations, at least when I was there, if you lived within the catchment, if you live close to Cora Hospital, you may very well find that you're easily qualifying for the the outpatient treatment, that is, because you could come to the outpatient programs on Tuesdays and Thursdays and benefit from that. But you'd find that if you lived, at least these were the considerations I would apply when I was there. If you lived far and it was difficult for you to travel, come to the outpatient program, then we may consider that as one of the considerations to have you enroll in the inpatient program. A second consideration is if you lived in a high-risk environment. For instance, if there were other people in your household or in your right there in your vicinity, who are using drugs, or you're living near the block and all of that, then we would probably want to remove you from that setting where you come into a safe and protected environment, at least for 6 weeks, so that during that 6 weeks, you get an opportunity to experience what a drug-free life would be like for a person who would have probably been using alcohol and drugs for a long time, continuously, daily. You come and you are sheltered from that environment, and you are deliberately kept off these drugs under supervision, and find that after a few weeks, your body starts giving you messages. Hey, your body will ask you, when is the last time you felt like this? Look, you're sleeping better, you're eating better, your brain seems to be working better, you're feeling better about yourself, your family is now visiting you and all of that. These are very powerful, encouraging stimulus that will help you to start off on your way to recovery. And the research shows that there's no big difference between short-term programs like the 6-week program and even the 9-month program that is offered at, or used to be offered at the Piparo Empowerment Center. Now, long-term programs do have a benefit in that while you are there and you have recovered, initially from the withdrawal symptoms and all of that, you get a chance to practice a lot of the principles that you are now learning, but some of these long programs also tend to have an occupational therapy component that retrain people for the world of work and going back into their communities and so on, where the short-term programs are not as effective in providing that kind of support. Some of these long-term programs, I know in New York as well, the DTOP International program, where I did my training, they have halfway houses so that when you leave the initial treatment program, maybe after 3 months or 6 months, depending on your application, how well you improved, in the eyes of the administrators and so on, you get to go to a halfway house. In the halfway house now, you get to stay there because a lot of people who ended up in chronic drug use and so on end up being homeless in Trinidad and worldwide. And sometimes they don't have anywhere to go back to after they have come into treatment, Jason. So it's really a waste of time and resources to spend all that money, all that effort to treat a person and then throw them back on the streets. Because you know what's going to happen. When you throw them back on the streets, all they know is the street life. And most of them, they will relapse. You understand? And that is worse off when you relapse the second time, because every time a person relapses, they lose confidence. Their family members lose confidence in them as well. That look, he went for treatment. He did all of this and he will never change. That's the conclusion they come to. And this is why it is very important in the first instance to give it your best shot. And I'm saying this to all my colleagues in the helping profession, who are listening to this program. If you have an alcoholic or drug addict sitting opposite, across the room desk from you, and you get the opportunity to be able to do an intervention, it is important that when an alcoholic or drug addict comes to, even though they probably in denial, most of them they are, they're only showing up at Cobra or they're showing up at your office because they were pressured by some crisis, some situation. They might have been referred from the court, or the wife gave them an ultimatum, or the boss gave them an ultimatum that you go and, do something about your drinking or drug use, otherwise you're going to lose your job. So they are there not so much because they want to be there. And when we think about the stigma associated with alcoholism and drug addiction, a lot of people will try umpteen times to do this on their own without having to let anybody else know that they have this problem, so that it is, I think, it is up to the psychiatrist or the psychologist or the counselor. We have a responsibility to help that person to develop motivation for recovery. And how we do that is by helping them to develop insight. Insight is you help the person to realize it is not the friends that causing them to drink. It is not because they were disinherited that those would only be triggers, but the real reason that they are drinking is because they have become dependent, that they have become powerless, that they have become compulsive. And to do that, you have to help them to see the relationship between their drinking and their current situation. That it is their drinking that is causing them to get sick, that it is their drinking that caused them to get in trouble with the law, that it is their drinking that causing them to have problem in their marriage or in their job or with their health. You have to help them to learn what is called consequential thinking. And you have to help them to see it honestly so that they don't, not blaming other people for their drinking, but they are seeing the true role that alcohol and drug has played in their life. That is the responsibility of the counselor and whoever is doing the intervention to help that person, because if you lose that opportunity, you don't know if that person is ever going to show up again, anywhere else, because even the relatives will say, I took him to the psychiatrist or I took him to the counselor, and even then that did not work, not realizing that it takes a combination of effort from the client as well as the professional. You understand? So that professionals need to bear this in mind. I'm not saying that they don't, but I just reminding that, you know, it is a it is a unique opportunity when an alcoholic or drug addict present themselves to you, and you are fortunate to be in a position to help that person. You know, because my own belief, Jason, is that these things do not happen by accident. You know, nothing in God's world happen by accident. If a person comes to you for help, it is because God guided them. And if you are put in a position to help, you must be mindful of that, that, you know, you must do your best. However, the thing is, you know, personally, I don't take the credit, so I won't have to take the blame. I only see myself as an instrument of God's will. So when I speak to someone, I'm hoping that God is using me to speak to that person. And I know I have been, you know, used by my higher power to help a lot of people. And I thank God for that opportunity. But coming back to one, very important that if you are going to a center for help, it is important to choose the best center that is suitable for your purposes. Because a lot of people, they have a job, they can't find the time to go for 6 weeks somewhere, they'll lose their job. And the job is their income, and the family depends on it. So some people will have to go to the outpatient program out of necessity. And then some people, if you can't go get the time off even to go to the outpatient program, most of our AA meetings are in your own community. And they're usually, most of the meetings in Trinidad are at 7 in the evening. So most people will find it convenient to go to work, come back, have something to eat, and go to your meeting. And now it is even easier. We have online meetings. The same Zoom platform that we are having this program on, Jason, is the same platform that a lot of people can access every evening here. And I'm saying this not only to the people in Trinidad and Tobago, anyone in the world, once you have a smartphone and you have internet, you can access this program. And this program is on every evening from 7 o'clock. So wherever in the world you are, you can access this. And anyone who is interested, they can call me after the program. I'll give them the meeting ID and the password, and they can access the program, so that you really don't have an excuse. If you have the desire to do something about your drinking and it is totally confidential, you can call me after the program and I'll give you the information. And I can tell you, Jason, a lot of people, you would be surprised. Just 2 days ago, I got some information from a colleague who was telling me just before the COVID, Alcoholics Anonymous population worldwide was just about 2.2 million. Do you know, since the COVID, it is peaking now almost to 3 million people because of the online meetings. Right now, as we speak, there are meetings that are going on in New Zealand, in Australia, in South Africa, in the United States. There are 24-hour meetings, so that anywhere in the world you are, once you have internet, or you can access it through data, you can access a meeting. And now you can be in an online meeting and you can remain totally anonymous, because you don't have to put on your picture, you don't have to show your face, you don't even have to put your name. You can put a mnemonic, you can put one of the nicknames, that you have, and you can access the meeting. And I can tell you that in Trinidad, now a lot of women are accessing the meeting, and young women. You understand? This is a strange. I've been looking at Alcoholics Anonymous for the last 40 years in Trinidad, and it had only been in the past predominantly, men, ageable men, older men. Now I am seeing the population, the real true population, the people who really need the help when they need it. Because of this Zoom platform, Jason, they are accessing the program. Young men and young women are coming on to the program and staying sober. There are people who are now sober for more than 2 years and they have never been to a physical meeting. They've just been on the Zoom platforms. Isn't that amazing? So sometime in a crisis, there are opportunities. In fact, the crisis of alcoholism has the potential of creating opportunities. Today, my best experience, Jason, in fact, my treasure trove is my own drinking experience. It is what I use, you know, I've been using and it is what makes me passionate about this program because I know, in Trinidad we have a saying, been there, done that. Well, I've been there, done that, so that I know what it is. I've come from a very respectable family. That is no insurance that, I wouldn't have become an alcoholic. I had a very good education. That and all was not a barrier or an insulation. I had a good job. I had the best upbringing I could think about. None of these things are insulated me from becoming an alcoholic. So that I'm saying to all our brothers and sisters listening out there, both locally and abroad, that alcoholism is a disease and you could be born with it. It is not your fault. If your father or your grandfather, or your great grandfather was alcoholic or drug addict, you could have inherited the genes and become predisposed to it so that when you take that first drink, you would have developed a craving for another drink. So it's not your fault. It's an illness. And we don't fault people for being sick. In fact, the World Health Organization, the Pan American Health Association, even in Trinidad, our medical association and Ministry of Health, we accept alcoholism as a disease. So people don't get fired from their job for being an alcoholic or a drug addict. The first intervention is to send them for help. Because the bottom line, Jason, some of the best craftsmen, some of the best artists, some of the best professionals are alcoholics, I don't know if talent has a relationship. Probably it does. Someday somebody would research that people who are highly talented, highly motivated might be more susceptible, or vulnerable to alcoholism and drug addiction. Maybe we need to look at that. But I know from experience that a lot of the people I have met who are alcoholics and drug addicts are people who are very skilled tradesmen, very talented, professionals. And it is really a waste for society to have invested so much in schooling and developing these people and then to lose them to alcoholism and drug addiction. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of, some of the top companies in the world, they recognize this, that they know that among their workforce, there are a lot of people who might be afflicted by this disease. And so they have what you call employee assistance programs. I have been an employee assistance program consultant for many years, and I have done work for the staff at the Port Authority, for the University of the West Indies, for the several other large, when ISPAT was on, I would do work for them as well. Because after investing so much time and effort in a worker and training, it would be really a loss to the workforce, to the company, to have to lose them because of alcoholism. And now we know that they can go, there are places a person can go. Actually, right now as we speak, I have a client of mine who was referred by a large company in South Trinidad. And he is about almost 2 months sober now, clean from all drugs, and he's ready to join back the workforce. I think he has been rehired to join back the workforce. So these are all examples, and one life is so important, Jason, that we can't help if we could help it. And this is what this program is about. If me and you doing this program on a Thursday from 9 to 10 could save one person, Jason, from going down that road to destruction, Remember, when you help one alcoholic, you didn't only help the alcoholic, you help the alcoholic's mother, father, siblings, everyone who's connected to that person, their children, the neighbor, the employer, so many, because this disease impacts so many people. It has a ripple effect in the entire society. So that I think it is worth it. Although I know sometimes it feels like we are losing the battle because the population of drinking and drug use never seem to be going down, but increasing, because as people use it more and more to help them to cope with the stressors of life. We just come through the pandemic, and a lot of people are facing unemployment. There's a lot of family disruption as a result of that. So it's taking a toll. And a lot of people have found, yes, when they take a few drinks, they could help themselves to cope with the stresses of life. But I want to let them know that whatever a man can do drunk, he can do it better sober. Being in the counseling profession, I can tell you, it is a known fact that, if you take a drink, does not ever solve the problem. Yes, it gives you a moment of reprieve, but you still have to come back and face it later on. And with the drink, sometimes you may have created another problem. You probably cursed someone, or you insulted, disrespected the boss, and now you rarely set up yourself to be dismissed. Or the police stop you, or all the thing that goes with drinking. So just before we close, I want to let our listeners know there's not only the Substance Abuse Prevention and Treatment Center, CORA, there is also the San Fernando Hospital in South Trinidad. They have an outpatient clinic that is held every Monday from 9 o'clock at the Chest Clinic. Then there's Alcoholics Anonymous. In my own community in Felicity here, there are 5 groups now that people have access to. There's also private treatment facilities. You have the New Life Ministries at Mount St. Benedict. You have the Heal House, which is in Central Trinidad. You have the Rebirth House that has also been helping a lot of doing human service to the society here, that is based in Port of Spain. And anyone who wants to contact any one of these institutions, they can get in touch with me after, and I'll be only too happy to help them to access the help and the treatment, so that the ball is in your court. And as I've said, today is the only day in our lives. We are not, none of us are sure if tomorrow is going to come. So if you want to do anything in life, especially if you want to do something about your drinking or drug use, today is the day. And remember, the formula is only, we do it as one day at a time. So if you want to stop, all you have to do is to stop for the rest of today. And you don't even have to stop for this evening. You only have to stop for right now. So you can put down that cigarette. You can get rid of the cigarette if you wish to, and start from now. You can get rid of the marijuana that you have hidden and start from right now. And I can assure you that you will not die if you didn't smoke that cigarette or that spliff or take that drink. In fact, you are going to live, and you are going to live to good purpose. And we are all here to support you in that effort. Myself, Jason, and all the people at the station. If you have a problem, you can call the station as well, and they will give the numbers, and they're only too willing to help. So that I want to thank you, Jason. I know we are coming very close to the end of the program, and I want to say, apologize for this phone that is ringing constantly. But it's an indication of the people who are trying to reach, me. So that, yes.
Yeah, so thank you for always taking the time to do the program, and you end on a wonderful note today. That's right. Choosing the right program for you is very important. And of course, like Mr. Dwarka said, help is readily available even at your fingertips. So until next Thursday, join us right here on your #1 Hindi radio station and TV station. Until then, I am Jason Clue saying see you around for now.